Hi friends, I hope you are doing well today. It is Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and I hope that this weekend finds you well rested, happy, or at least sane, healthy, and safe. Back in December, I did video 24, which was the first video on the COVID-19 vaccine. And in that video, we covered how the vaccine works, how it is impossible for this vaccine to actually change your DNA. And we also addressed a few myths and concerns that had been circulating at that time, including infertility, the vaccine being rushed, and the use of aborted fetal cell lines in the testing and production of the vaccine. And so if you'd like to watch that one, it is available on my Facebook feed, on my Instagram profile, and my YouTube channel. And it is from December 9th. Now that 14 million initial doses and 31 million doses in total have been given here in the United States, I am back to do round 2 and hopefully answer some more questions and ease some concerns about all the different things that you have been reading about. Just like last time though, I am asking that this platform remain civil and respectful. It is absolutely okay to ask questions and to discuss openly and honestly, but it is not okay to name call or belittle. And for my anti-vax friends, just like last time, you are more than welcome to listen in and hopefully with an open mind. But again, for every derogatory or disrespectful comment that is posted, I will donate $10 to pro-vaccine research. And if you choose to use my face or anybody in my family's face as a anti-vax campaign photo, I will donate $500 to pro-vaccine research. So that doesn't mean you can't ask questions, you just can't be ugly about it. And for those of you who are still nervous, still hesitant about this vaccine, if not just totally overwhelmed with the sheer amount of information that there is out there about it right now, I hope that this video will help you. I wanted to let you know that I have actually received both doses of my vaccine. I got the first one on December 21st and the second one 1 week ago from today. And I had nothing unusual in terms of side effects. A sore arm, felt some chills, a bit achy, tired, nothing that actually prevented me from taking care of the kids, from going to work, from exercising. And interestingly enough, I think my second dose was a little bit easier than the first dose. So let's jump right in. I wanted to talk about allergic reactions, namely because you may have read in the news just this morning, a few hours ago, one particular lot of the Moderna vaccine in California has been put on hold. And this was done out of an abundance of caution, because somewhere between 6 and 10 individuals, I can't find an exact report, received this vaccine through the drive-through vaccination site at Petco Park in San Diego, and they developed an allergic reaction. And this is higher than what we would typically expect. The expected rate is somewhere between 1 in 100,000 doses. And that particular facility started to notice this, and yesterday they just stopped using that particular lot number, and they basically switched to a different lot number and different vials, and they saw no further reactions throughout the course of the day. Fortunately, no other clusters like this have been reported with this same lot number, despite the fact that 330 doses from that lot number have been provided to 287 medical providers across the state. But again, to be absolutely safe, California locations that have this lot number have been asked not to distribute any more vaccines until further investigation has been done. And of course, this is concerning, but here's what I want you to think about when something abnormal happens. This is the type of response that we want to see. You don't want something like this to be swept under the rug. You don't want it to be hidden from the public, and you don't want business to be carried out as usual. We want to make sure that everybody is informed of what's happening, and we want to put a pause so that we can look at what's happening and make sure that we are not putting anybody in the way of harm by administering the vaccine from this particular lot that caused a few extra allergic reactions. And it's also important to remember that we are in mass production mode here. And just like with lettuce or baby teething tablets or tons of other items that are available to you at your local grocery store or pharmacy, there have been recalls in the past because things like this happen. I actually think that this is a little bit more coincidence and that they are just acting out of an abundance of caution, and I 100% approve of that, but I don't think we're going to see too much actually evolve from this. And again, not seeing this in any other facility is definitely reassuring. And to give you a little bit more information on allergic reactions, there was a more thorough study that was reported last month in MMWR. With the first 1.9 million doses of the vaccine that were given in December, there were 21 cases of anaphylaxis, and that is essentially your most severe type of allergic reaction. And this comes out to about 11 cases per 1 million doses administered. 15 of the 21 had a reaction within the first 15 minutes, which makes sense in terms of true allergic reactions and anaphylaxis. 17 of those 21 had known allergies, and 7 of those 21 had had a history of anaphylaxis. 20 of the 21 were available for follow-up, and all of them had completely recovered. So while anaphylaxis is not something that you want anyone to have to deal with, it is fortunately something that we are aware of and we know how to treat very well, quickly, and effectively. And so some guidelines for those of you who do have allergies and are wondering whether or not you are even eligible to take the vaccine. Obviously, if you are allergic to one of the components of the vaccine, which includes polyethylene glycol, if you have ever had a colonoscopy and you've had to drink something to clear out your system and you are allergic to it, that is essentially polyethylene glycol. Another form of polyethylene glycol is in Miralax, which is an over-the-counter laxative. So if you've had an allergic reaction to one of the ingredients within the vaccine, obviously you should not take it. If you had an allergic reaction to your first dose, obviously you should not take the second dose. But for those who have severe reactions to foods, pets, venom like bee stings, environmental allergies, latex, or allergies to oral medications, you are in fact eligible to receive the vaccine, and it is recommended that you do so. The same applies for those who have a family history of severe allergic reactions. Now, if you are allergic to specific vaccines that have been given to you in the past or certain injectable medications, then I do think it's important that you talk with your doctor, look at the ingredients list a little bit more closely, just to make sure that you are 100% safe. And this will probably happen anyhow, but when you do go to get your vaccine, you of course want to let the person who is administering the vaccine know about your reactions so they can monitor you even more closely. Now, number two, another question that has come my way often. Many have said, well, the vaccine doesn't even make you immune, so what is the point in taking it? Well, what we know is that by taking this vaccine, you give yourself a 95% chance of not developing a severe illness with COVID-19. Will it protect you from being exposed? Of course not. Will it protect you from being infected at all after you've been exposed or developing an asymptomatic illness? We don't know yet. And the reason we don't know is because the primary endpoint of the Pfizer and the Moderna trials was to assess whether this vaccine protected the vaccinated person from getting severe disease from COVID-19. We needed to know this information first and foremost before looking at any other endpoint. Why? Because clearly you need to give people a good reason to take the vaccine. Preventing themselves from testing positive or preventing an asymptomatic illness is not a reason to develop and take a vaccine. But preventing severe illness and death is absolutely a reason to develop and take a vaccine. Similarly, many have been asking, can you still spread the virus after you've taken the vaccine? And once again, we don't know yet. And this is because we haven't tested this out yet. We do hope that with the antibodies that your body creates when you take the vaccine, it will literally crush the virus should it enter into your body so that it has no time to replicate. And if that is the case, you won't shed the virus and you will not transmit it after being vaccinated. And it's important to keep in mind that every other vaccine that protects you against disease, particularly with this same degree of efficacy, also protects you from spreading it. And so my suspicion is that the COVID-19 vaccine will also prevent you from spreading it, but until we have the data that proves that, we can't say it does for sure. And remember, if I were to take this vaccine and you were to take this vaccine, then it becomes less of an issue if we're spreading it to one another because we are both protected from the severe disease. And on a grander scale, the more people who take the vaccine, again, the less of an issue it becomes if we're spreading it, because it's like we're spreading something even more mild than the cold. And nobody worries about us spreading colds, right? So, number 3, pregnancy and breastfeeding. As of right now, the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists have stated that the vaccine should not be withheld from a woman who is pregnant or breastfeeding just because the initial trials did not include pregnant or breastfeeding women in their study. The decision to take the vaccine while pregnant is obviously a stressful and difficult one, given the lack of data that we have right now. And much of this decision requires weighing out the risks and the benefits. We know that contracting the SARS-CoV-2 virus during pregnancy does increase the chance of severe disease and maternal death, as well as premature delivery in pregnant women. But if you are fairly well isolated at home while pregnant, with the ability to control who you are exposed to and the ability to control who your household contacts are exposed to, then it may be reasonable for you to wait. On the other hand, if you are in a position where you are exposed to many people a day throughout your job, and you obviously have very little control what those people are doing before they come into contact with you, then your risk of contracting COVID-19 is obviously higher. And ultimately, this comes down to having an upfront discussion with your OB. And I will say that I think most OBs have actually now become in favor of the vaccine for their pregnant patients, and many pregnant healthcare workers on the front lines have opted in as well. As for breastfeeding, which is a little closer to me since I often advise breastfeeding moms what is safe for their babies, I see no reason not to take this vaccine. At the very least, you'll give your baby nothing extra. At the very most, you may actually transmit protective antibodies to your baby should you become infected after having received the vaccine. And since our babies under the age of 1 year are considered at high risk for severe infection as well, this extra protection to your baby does not seem like a bad thing to me. Now I'm going to start addressing the real elephants in the room. You may have read this past weekend that there was a recent report of 23 elderly individuals in a skilled nursing facility who died after taking the vaccine in Norway. I want to start by letting you know that 38 million doses of the vaccine have been administered, the initial doses, in 49 countries so far. Of those 38 million, 42,000 initial doses have been given in Norway. Also in Norway, they report an average of 400 deaths per week in their long-term care facilities. And recently, the Norwegian Medicine Agency said that there were 23 deaths within their long-term care facility residents, which occurred shortly after the vaccine. We don't know what shortly after means as of yet. Each of these residents were described as being frail, elderly, and with serious disease. And they all developed known side effects such as fever, nausea, and diarrhea. No unusual side effects were reported from these facilities. 13 of those 23 had autopsies done, and the autopsies suggested that the known side effects of fever, nausea, and diarrhea may have contributed to the cause of death. And so you may be asking, well, how do those simple things cause someone to die? Well, in your average healthy adult or your 60, 70, 80-year-old, it probably alone is not going to cause you to die. But if we are talking about our most elderly, over the age of 90 and some over 95, frail individuals with pre-existing serious conditions, then things like your heart beating faster when you have a fever, or with dehydration, which might come because you're not drinking a lot of fluids if you feel nauseous, or because you have diarrhea and you're getting dehydrated that way, then that can have detrimental effects because their cardiovascular system is just not as robust or tolerant of such insults like someone who is younger than them. Fortunately, this is not something that we are seeing to this effect within skilled nursing facilities in the United States, even though 1.4 million doses, which is, gosh, almost 2.5 times higher than what's been given in Norway, have been given throughout our long-term care facilities. So no doubt, this is something that we have to keep a very close eye on, particularly with our oldest and our sickest individuals who are receiving the vaccine. But we also have to remember that the mortality rate of COVID-19 in individuals over the age of 90 is 20%. And I think it is undeniable that these are the individuals who are dying from this disease more than anybody else. Okay, so then let's talk about the doctor in Florida who died. Dr. Gregory Michael was a 56-year-old obstetrician in Florida, and he died 16 days after receiving his first dose of the vaccine. Dr. Michael died because he bled into his brain, and at the time, his platelet count was 0. A normal platelet count is anywhere between 100,000 and 400,000. And platelets are these tiny little things in our bloodstream that help us to stop bleeding. When your platelet count falls below 10,000, you become at risk for bleeding spontaneously into your internal organs. And that's exactly what he did. The reason his platelet count fell was because of a condition called immune thrombocytopenia, or ITP. And this actually occurs at a rate of 3.3 per 100,000 US adults every single year. Whether the vaccine itself caused ITP is unknown. Now, the CDC and Pfizer have concluded that there was no causal relationship between the two events, but I can understand that that may not be confidence-inspiring to many of you. I personally feel as though the 16 days that elapsed between vaccine administration and death makes it far less likely that one undeniably caused the other. We also know that ITP often occurs after a recent illness, and I can't be certain that Dr. Michael would not have developed this same cascade of events the next time his immune system was stimulated, such as with a cold or a stomach bug. Lastly, we have not seen multiple cases of ITP after this vaccine, again, despite the millions of doses that have now been administered throughout the US as well as throughout the world. Last but not least, let's talk about Bell's palsy. So Bell's palsy is a temporary condition where one of your facial nerves actually becomes inflamed, and it causes paralysis of half of the side of your face. And you may see an eye droop, you may have an inability to completely close your eye, your mouth might sag down as well. It most often occurs after viral infections and can be treated with a short course of oral steroids. It actually affects 40,000 Americans each year, or 0.01% of the population. And that's important to remember. In the Pfizer trial of 44,000 participants, 4 people got Bell's palsy, which is 0.01%. And these were reported 3, 9, 37, and 48 days after vaccination. In the Moderna trial, which had 30,000 participants, 3 people got Bell's palsy, and they were 22, 28, and 32 days after the vaccine. And again, that's 0.01% of that group. 1 person in the placebo group even got it. So you have to realize that Bell's palsy is going to happen in people who receive the vaccine, but we cannot say that Bell's palsy is causing, we cannot say that the vaccine is causing Bell's palsy, because all right, sorry about that, folks. Somehow I just completely disconnected and it shut me off. And so I will continue with where I was at before. So we were talking about Bell's palsy, and we had just finished talking about the number of people who got Bell's palsy in both the Pfizer and Moderna trials, and how that number was not any different than the amount of Bell's palsy that is occurring in the natural population. And I will tell you, when it comes to Bell's palsy, please, please, please be aware of the misinformation that is spreading on this one. There was a video that was actually circulating last month about a nurse from Tennessee named Kalila Mitchell, who was saying that she got Bell's palsy 3 days after the vaccine. But when some further investigation was actually done, there was no registered nurse with that name in 49 states within the US, and there was no one with that name who had been given a vaccine in Tennessee. So again, you have to be cautious with some of the information that is spreading out there. I want you to be aware of what's out there, but I don't want you to be listening to things that are simply not true and having that sway your decision. So ultimately, what has to be remembered is that this vaccine is not a spoonful of sugar, and it is not a teaspoon of water. It is a therapeutic agent, just like Tylenol or an antibiotic. Most are going to have the very typical course that is reported in the studies, and like I had, but some will not. And that doesn't mean that it's ineffective, or that it's harmful, or that it should be taken off the market, or that it shouldn't be offered to those who want it. Physical illnesses that naturally happen in the world, like anaphylaxis and Bell's palsy and appendicitis and heart attacks and ITP and death, are going to continue to happen at their normal rates, regardless of vaccination. And we have to remember this when the media keeps sending us clickbait articles. The trials that were done thus far purposefully studied a placebo group to make sure that the incidence of these types of scary things were not statistically significantly higher in the vaccine group. And they were not, and they continue to not be in the millions of people worldwide who have gotten the vaccine. And I know that this is not an easy decision, and the truckloads of misinformation that you have to weed through is absolutely enormous. But when it comes down to it, we are losing 3,000 to 4,000 Americans every day in the US with a local and a state healthcare system that is beyond capacity. You have no idea of knowing, should you contract COVID-19 for the first time or the second time, whether you will be one of those thousands, or whether you will be a long hauler with chronic fatigue, insomnia, heart problems, some of which are not ever regaining their sense of taste or smell, should you become infected. And so you and only you can weigh out the risks and the benefits. And no doubt that your values and your judgments and your previous experience with this virus, as well as with vaccines in general, will affect your decision as to whether or not to take it. But I will tell you, as someone who has received both doses, it feels good to know that I am in some control of my fate. I don't have to rely on someone else to wear their mask to protect me. I don't have to rely on my hospital's bed availability to take care of me. I don't have to rely on someone else who has had this infection to donate convalescent plasma to me. I don't have to rely on being the part of the very elite, which I am not, and being given every experimental drug under the sun to make sure that I come out of this thing on the right side. You ultimately are going to have that privilege too when the vaccine is offered to you. And I do hope that you will take it. So that's it for this time, you guys. I hope it was helpful. Sorry about the glitchiness and having to switch back and forth between two different live videos. I'll try to fix that afterwards. All right, you guys, take care and enjoy your Martin Luther King Jr. holiday.